Hi there, and welcome back to Straight Talk for Mental Health. We are KG and Associates. It's been, I think, weeks, if not a couple of months, since we did our last podcast. There's been a lot going on, and we're going to get into that in a few minutes. But also, we're into full swing of summer. We're already looking at in the stores. I've noticed back to school fashions and school supplies. It's like that's always, a bad sign that summer is nearing the end. I'm here with my associate, Janice D'Souza, and we have a pretty exciting topic today. For those of you who don't know, Janice got married at the beginning of July, and I was grateful enough to be and honored enough to be at the wedding, the beautiful ceremony, and see the videos of the ceremonies that had happened earlier in the week, as well as the outstanding reception that was like a show in and of itself. It was great. But it made me think that this would be a great topic for us to talk about, and our listeners may be interested in hearing. We talked a lot about divorce and relationship problems and conflicts and separation. And we're going to kind of flip that all on its back today and talk about marriage and weddings and love and premarital issues. And it's a really relevant topic. And given Janice's recent life stage change, it just makes sense. And I just want to preface this conversation that I am always so excited when millennials, typically they're millennials that are coming into my practice, that will call and say something like this. My partner and I are getting married in the next year, and we don't really have any big problems, but we want to come in for some counseling to make sure that our future is strong. And now I'm even getting millennials coming in saying we're having our baby, next year, or
Yeah.
in the next couple of months, and we want to do some pre-parenting counseling. And I'm always thrilled to work on with clients in those places in their life, because it's preventative, and they're so keen and motivated, and I love it. So welcome back, Janice. That's a long introduction, but welcome back. And again, congratulations on your marriage. I know we were just talking about this last night. What a beautiful ceremony and reception you had. And for me, it was just totally living in all of the love that surrounded you on that day. I'm getting choked up as I talk about it, because it's just so, life is complicated, and sometimes it's hard, but to be in a room where there was so much love. So let's just jump in, and you tell me what all of that meant to you.
Yeah, no, Karen, I really, really love that. Every time I talk to you about the wedding, all I hear from you is surrounded by love. And I
Yeah.
think that's exactly what it is. Like, I think that entire celebration was just a lot of family and friends coming together to be supportive, be very like open-minded about cultural differences.
Yeah.
Um, there was just, like you said, just so much love. And anytime someone asks me, how was the wedding? How was everything? I'm like, yeah, it was just genuine, pure love that we received. And I think that's what made it so great.
Yeah, and I think like the love you and Mirage have, it's almost like that emanated to everybody in the room, and you guys were kind of obviously at the forefront, literally, but also figuratively, in terms of like really embracing what this all meant. And it really,
Yes.
I believe it kind of pulled out the best in everyone. So tell me what was so important for you, and what this all meant for you.
Yeah, so definitely I think just to go off the love, like the most important part of the wedding, and I think for both of us was the coming together of both families, friends, and different cultures. So my husband is Hindu, Gujarati Hindu, and I'm Catholic.
Mm.
So it was a difference in religions, cultures, and it was just so beautiful to see how everyone just came to each event, kind of not knowing what to expect, right? Like my side of the family didn't really know what to expect for those events, and vice versa. But it was just so nice to see how excited everyone was. And even looking back at the pictures, all I see are like smiles, like genuine big smiles on everyone's face, people dancing. Just honestly, I think it was overall celebration of the different religions, cultures, families, friends all coming together was definitely hands down the most important part of
Yeah.
the wedding itself.
Yeah, that's incredible. And when there is that open-heartedness to like, oh, this is different.
Yes.
Maybe I'm curious about this rather than judgmental. It's like then everybody wins, right? Because we are all to some degree different in terms of how we do things or think things or feel things. And so was that difficult at times though, because you're trying to embrace different cultures, different religions? Like, did that get challenging at times?
I don't think so, and I think primarily that might be just being raised in such a multicultural country, and city itself. Like, we were just like, even growing up, I went to public schools, and I'd always been exposed to different religions, cultures, so I'd always really enjoyed that part and embraced it wholeheartedly. So I don't think, like, between us or our families, we really faced any. Definitely the getting used to and learning what to do at each religious ceremony could have been a challenge at times, just because it's different, and we didn't know what to expect. Like, for example, Mirage at church, I remember, like, during the mass, I could feel him shaking a bit, so I knew he was a little nervous.
Right.
And I'm like, he's usually like doesn't get nervous by things, but I think he just wanted to make sure he was doing everything right, like,
Yeah.
and vice versa for like our Hindu ceremony. I was a little like, okay, I just want to focus, make sure like I'm doing what's expected. So yes, I think in terms of like the religious ceremonies, you just didn't want to mess up in a way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
otherwise, like, it's just the support, right? Once again, everyone was kind of like guiding us, telling each of us what to do, and
Right.
no judgment. Like, it was just open heartedness, acceptance, like, yeah, just culturally educating both of us too, right? And
Yeah.
our families. So it
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah, and it makes sense there would be some nervousness because it's unfamiliar, right? And
Yeah,
at the same time, it's such an important event. Yeah.
exactly.
And I'd like to think how we've evolved over the generations. Like I hear my
Hmm.
parents talk about some of the challenges they were faced with. My mom was
Yeah.
Ukrainian Catholic. My dad was kind of a town boy, from like had Dutch and Irish in his background, and so very very different upbringings and cultures, and it was hard then. It was really hard. Good meaning people wanting just to protect their own cultural history
Yes.
and feeling challenged by the difference. And you'd like to think each generation does a little bit better, and it sounds like your experience was very different than theirs. So it's, yeah, even though the
Absolutely.
world sometimes is honestly the craziest place,
Yeah.
but we like to think that maybe we really are evolving, and that makes sense. So what was the hard part for you, or what was hard, yeah, challenging for you?
Oh, I definitely think the hardest part for me was letting go of control. I'm someone that loves planning and just wanting to take care of things. So at my own wedding, it was just learning and having to take a back seat sometimes and
Mm.
being like, okay, no, let someone else take care of this. Let someone else deal with the decor. Let someone else talk to this person. But I'm just someone that always needs to know what's happening. And I think as a bride, you can't really do that because you're already stressed by so many other things. To want to have control over everything that's going on, keeping track, it was a lot. It's too much. And
Yeah.
I think that was kind of even going into the wedding, because I knew, like, I'm very self-aware that I have this about me. So even going into the wedding, I was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna breathe, I'm gonna like divide tasks up, and I did for the most part, but there were still those pieces where it was just so hard because I wanted to be on top of everything.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I was decorating, and I was getting a little like burnt out at some point. And then finally, like, I was like, okay, I need to stop. I need to just calm down. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many people that want
Yeah.
to help. It was
Yeah.
just being able to allow them to come in and help, and just, trusting that, okay, fine. At the end of the day, it is what it is. It will, even if small things go here and there, it's okay. And
Yeah.
sitting with that feeling, I think was definitely the hardest
Yeah.
part for
And I
me.
know this is going to be like a gender biased question, but it's like, were you bridezilla?
So surprisingly, I wasn't. Like no one in my family or friends told me I was. I think it was more like I just internally was feeling it, but I tried my best not to. Like I think I'm more of a crier than like go full like bridezilla or yell at people. So for sure, breakdowns, yes.
Yeah,
Bridezilla, not so much, and I'm kind of happy about that because
yeah,
I didn't want to do that to
bridezilla to
other
yourself.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
Oh yeah, lots of tears, I'm sure. Good happy
Yeah.
tears and frantic tears. Yeah.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
I was literally just saying something like this to someone this morning that, an old mentor of mine said, think of therapy like you're helping people and we're all kind of like flowing down the river of life. And
Yeah.
therapists can be really helpful for people when they're kind of at that turn in the river where we're more likely to get stuck at the side. And I always
Mhm.
kind of pictured it like, okay, as a therapist, I'm kind of helping people move their sticks around so that they can flow again. And the
Right.
other way I pictured this was that the twists and turns in the river usually line up with the changes in our developmental stages of life. And we are
Yeah.
just having a higher level of vulnerability. And the stages, it could be, you're 2 years old getting dropped off at daycare for the first time, or you're getting married, or you're getting divorced, or you're
Yeah.
thinking retirement. And I love what you're saying because if there's any kind of like internalized issues that we haven't really completely mastered, they
Yeah.
tend to come to the surface more predominantly during those developmental changes. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. So
definitely.
and
Yeah.
and and the good news is that, well, like the bad news is we get stuck by the river, we can't get unstuck and we don't reach out for help. The good news is that
Yeah.
if we shift things a little bit, not only are we flowing again, but we've picked up a bit momentum. So when you
Yep.
mastered control, where you had to let go of like, okay,
Yeah.
it wasn't supposed to go this way, and you, like you said, you found your breath and then you trusted that it was going to be
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
And you probably, whether you realize it or not, you kind of advanced your own relationship with control by
Yes.
finding a way to let go, because I don't really want to ruin my wedding day arguing with the
Yeah.
caterers,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because where is that actually going to get me? So we mature so much
Yep.
when we figure out what to do with these developmental turns. Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely think like during this whole week and the celebration, there was a lot of like those self-awareness moments, recognizing, okay, this works, this doesn't, this
Yeah.
is who I am as a person, and kind of like you said, mastering those specific issues such as control and just kind of riding with it. That was really important.
Yeah, and you can take that into your marriage now, right? It's like
Yeah,
one of these hidden gifts of like, okay, so I can't control everything, and
yeah,
I have to trust that everything's going to be okay. And yeah, your husband
for
will love
sure.
that probably. And was it different for him, do you think? Like we're obviously talking about a heterosexual relationship, and so there's
Yep.
lots of different issues and ideas and partnerships out there, but in terms of what you saw with him, do you think he experienced marriage and the wedding day differently or not from you?
I definitely think it was different, and it's so funny, so many people were sending me these memes, on Instagram or these little videos where it's like, okay, bride is, like, frantically, like, all over, and then there's the groom chilling in the patio with his beer in his hand, and, like, I would send this to Miraj all the time, like, "Yeah, this is you," and it's not that like, he definitely wanted to be part of planning and everything, but I think internally he was a lot chiller about like how would the week go, like very like, okay, I'm here to have a great time, I'm here to party. Whereas I think for me, I just was like, oh, like I just want to make sure everything's going well. I want to make sure everything, is go smoothly. This is a plan. This is so I think in terms of that difference, but I definitely think he had a hectic week as well. Like
Mm,
difference in the sense like more tiredness, like because they were doing all the decor themselves, being out in the sun all day for photo shoots. He is not a fan of like the long hours of photo shoots, so that was like his. Whereas for me, I was like, oh, bring it on, like take all the photos you want.
yeah.
So definitely differences in that, but
And was
yeah,
that hard
overall,
for
yeah.
you? Was that hard for you that he wasn't frantic, that he was too chill? Did that bother you or not?
Not really, because I kind of actually appreciated that because I think if we were both frantic, and this is something we told each other going into wedding week, we were like, whatever stress is going on my side or whatever stress is going on his side, we're going to kind of go to other people to cope, not each other, because we knew that we'd have our own thing and we didn't want to double up on it. But there were days where I was more stressed and he was more chill. So it was kind of nice to go to him because he was comforting. Whereas I think if we were both frantic and just like constantly thinking, I think it would have not been the greatest.
So you decided not to turn to each other because why? Help me understand that.
So it was more so like, say, in my household or
Yeah.
events that I was like, our family was in charge of, say, like things were going a little bonkers or like, everything was,
Yeah.
not great. But say the same thing was happening at his place. We didn't want to like double up on that stress. So we thought like I would go to my brother and he would go to his sister as examples or friends. So
Oh,
that because they had different mindsets, right? They were not the bride and groom. And
I
I think
get it.
sometimes when the bride and groom come together and it's like the double stress almost creating like we say the perfect storm, right? In that like during the wedding week we decided to use other people as coping so we didn't double up on that stress. I don't know if that
Ah,
makes sense. It did
it
like to me.
does, it does. It surprises me, but it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't quite sure what you meant by the doubling up, but I get it because I'm already dealing with this, and now you're coming to me with this, and now like my head's
Yeah.
exploding. But you know what I really love about that story? Because initially I thought, "Oh, wow, they didn't, lean on each other." But really,
Yep.
what is and I should send this to you because many years ago, the New Yorker magazine published a paper called "The 9 Tasks of a Healthy Marriage," and I regularly send this out to premarital couples or couples who have a specific issue in their marriage that I know is different than what the New Yorker magazine published.
Yeah.
Helpful. But one of those tasks was around having resources in your relationship,
Mhm.
right? And that healthy balance of I and we,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we can't be everything to each other. And Esther Perel has
Yeah.
just exploded that whole idea that monogamous relationships are at higher risk if we go into it expecting that our
Mhm.
partner will be everything and anything
Everything.
for
Yeah.
us. It's a setup. So this is where my head starts to go as I'm listening to you because healthy couples do have that balance and those resources around them where they have other people they trust and can lean on or go to or for fun or
Yep.
so it's a
Yeah.
multi-dimensional relationship. And yeah, like I said, Esther Perel's really exploded that point, and her initial work was all around why monogamous couples were having such high levels of infidelity, and that was one
Yeah.
of her initial thesis points was about this idea that these expectations can't be met. So I think it's
Mhm.
incredibly resilient, actually, for you guys to even forecast. Hey, we're heading into this.
There
There's
was. Yeah.
going on, and that's a brilliant idea. So any listeners out there they that are getting married, might want to think about doing something similar because yeah, this double up, I think that's a new thing that we can call it. Doubling it up is not usually a good thing because it will overwhelm. And then for any of us that are overwhelmed with
Yeah.
doubling up, it's like I'm going to be at my worst even though I love you,
For sure. And I love what you just said about that piece of, using other resources. And I think that's something like Miraj and I have always taken pride in our relationship,
Yeah.
even while dating. Like we've always appreciated that good balance of, you go out with your friends, I go out with my friends, we do date nights, we go out with family. Like we've constantly really prioritized having that good, healthy balance. Because we like it somehow it just increase the appreciation we have for each other. And I always say to him, it's like even after like a girls' night, I know I'm coming home to you. And it's such a good feeling, right? Because you're maintaining your individual self, but also your relationship.
Yeah, I love that. And also just kind of this idea, like we talk with clients about like your home should be the soft place where you land.
Yeah.
And and we don't have to do everything together. And
Yeah.
whatever we need to be doing to kind of protect that softness, so that I can tell you about my day and we can have good
Yeah.
conversations and just yeah, create that softness for ourselves and each other. So let's talk a little bit about premarital counseling. Like, what do you think, like having gone through this so recently in your life, and either things that you thought about or talked about with each other, or
Yeah.
maybe be talking already with your clients, in terms of what are the key areas that you think are important for us to be conscious of as we head into that
Yeah.
step?
So actually, part of the Catholic wedding, we had to take a premarital course. It was about 6 weeks long, 3-hour classes, and then a one individual counseling session with a counselor. And honestly, the both of us appreciated it so much that we kept talking to all of our friends about it and family and encouraging it. Like we were like, it's exactly what you said. When couples come to you before getting married because they want to address some things in relationships that they could foresee, it's so important. And a lot of key things that came up was just like overall finances, values, daily habits. And I know something that really stuck with us from that course was they asked us to talk about, what are the small pebbles in our life and what are the larger stones. And pretty much what they were trying to get us to do is the larger stones are the things that we each prioritize the highest, and the smaller pebbles are like, okay, the little things that, are exist in life but are not, that as important to us. And we each had to write down what our bigger stones were, what our little pebbles were, and then share it. And I think that was such a nice thing to do because we were kind of able to see where our values aligned, where we had some differences, where we had similarities. And I remember at the top of both of ours was just relationships with family and friends. That was both of our bigger stones where we were like, that's something we really value, having good relationships, and feeling that support and love. And then, of course, in terms of finances, any like, how do we look at budgeting, saving, money, all of that, such important conversations. And I think another premarital big issue could be to consider is like daily habits and routines, because you're bringing two different people who have been raised very differently, who
Right.
now are going to live together and be in each other's spaces 24/7. And because Mirage and I cohabitated a couple of years, and I told you this last night, Karen, that we went through this when we started living together, where it was like,
Right.
okay, I like everything organized, put away right away, whereas Mirage is a little, okay, like, I'll do it for sure, but not right away. So it's finding that compromise and balance where it's like, okay, now we have a chores day where we both dedicate, we do this, you do this, I do this, and just kind of learning like what our pet peeves are, what are those daily routines, what do we like, what don't we like. Very big things that I think to consider. So definitely for me, it was the finances, values, and daily habits.
Yeah, and so I have a couple of things to say, but I want to ask you, like, so for anybody who's listening to this podcast and is, in a serious relationship, what have you learned so far is so important? Even if we just zone in on that last part around daily, like routines and expectations and the differences, because usually there is one partner who's more organized and
Yeah.
planned and completes tasks, and the other partner is like, oh, I'll get around to it. So what have you discovered could be helpful with those kinds of differences?
I think what was helpful for us was first off writing down the chores that each of us like doing more than others. And then another thing was literally having like a day, for example, Sunday would be dedicated to doing this. And then any smaller things throughout the week, like if it meant a lot to me and I absolutely needed it done right away, then Mirage is like, okay, tell me and I'll do it because I know it means so much to you. But then it was also like if there were things, little things that didn't mean so much, like if he didn't necessarily do something right away, but it didn't matter to me so much, then he's like, can we try to let those things go? So I was really finding that key balance of, what is really important to each of us, what can we kind of let go during the week, and then really Sundays would be like our focus time. Like, okay, this is what we're doing during this, whether that's meal prepping, chores, dedicating that one day. So it's not that everyday buildup of like after work, you're already tired. Now I don't want to like, have this whole thing on my like have to deal with. So just finding that balance, I think, and dividing what each of us liked. And somehow it worked out that the things I didn't like doing, he did like doing, and the things he doesn't like doing, I did like
Perfect.
doing. So that just like that,
So good when
yeah.
that lines up. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. And I love the idea of like this having this one day where things get cleaned up, because almost like an integration of like, I'm not prepared to just completely let it go. And he goes, well, I don't
Yeah.
want to be like running tasks every day.
Yes.
So you find that middle ground. I don't always use the word compromise, but I like the integration and the flexibility
Mhm.
of
Yes.
like trying to integrate our two kind of natural places we prefer, want where we want to land, and somehow create, our own recipe of a little bit of yours and a little bit of mine.
Yeah.
I really love, I want to go back to this pebbles and stones because that is a great metaphor. Sometimes when I'm working with couples, when we're teaching the dialogue, and those dialogues
Yes.
end with specific requests, and I always say something like, well, because couples will always say, well, what if I get down to a black, like we started with a black and white issue, and we get down to our requests and we're still black and white. And I'll say, well, first of all, you're very rarely going to be still in a black and white situation, because the dialogue teaches active listening and validation and empathy. And then when we're empathized and validated, we start to feel differently about the original problem. So we end up being more together on the issue than we thought, and we can
Yeah.
easily find our way out of it. But if it ever does stay as a black and white, which is rare, I will say something like, let's it may be helpful to recognize where one issue might be more important to one partner than the other.
Yeah.
And it's not like we keep scoring, well, you had it your way this time and I got to have it my way this time. But it is kind of the pebbles and the stones, because usually on a particular issue, it usually is sometimes quite obvious that this is actually means a lot more to me than you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so the other person really can let go of their initial idea a little easier. And but also highlighting what those stones are, because whether they're game changers or rule breakers or whatever we
Hmm.
call it, deal breakers, it's like no, this is something that is almost like I can't change my mind on. And so
Yeah.
we look at the compatibility, because we want enough difference that we're growing,
Yes.
but not so much difference that our core values, or what
Hmm.
our rocks
Exactly.
are, right? Because I don't know what happens when two rocks, collide on a hill. It's not
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah. I love what you said. Like, absolutely. It's those bringing together the differences to grow, but like you said, not the clash.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other word that came to mind as I was listening to was expectations, because oftentimes when we're heading into a different stage of life, whether it's having children or getting
Hmm.
married, it's the I always say it's not the differences that break couples apart, it's how we manage the differences.
Yeah.
And when we can communicate on our different expectations of what we thought it was going to be or what it is, because we literally can't forecast everything. But
For sure.
wherever possible, kind of having that conversation about, the different parts of life and what our expectations are, wherever possible, kind of not being afraid to touch the hard parts of the fact that
Yeah.
maybe we have different ideas on this, and what do we want to do about it. Because to me, that can be a real kryptonite in relationships, when it was like we are literally working on different levels, because what you thought was
Yeah.
going to happen is so completely different than what I expected, and it's hurtful. It's really hurtful.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, so we are what, a month and 3 days after your wedding, so this is like hot off the press. Anything that surprised you, or anything that as you're transitioning to married life that you're noticing or surprised by?
I'm like, yeah, I'm not
I put you
surprised
on the
by
spot
anything.
there.
Yeah.
You're
No,
like, I don't know. You're still in
yeah.
the honeymoon, Janice.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what it is. Like, so far, like, yeah, nothing. And I know there's obviously going to be challenges, things that, like you said, right? Things that we don't
Yeah,
foresee.
yeah,
But right now, I think just we have like this good groove going. Like I said, that balance that we're both always on the same page about is kind of what keeps like it just really going. Like, we have our own interests, hobbies, and I think really after the wedding this past month has been slowly getting back into that routine. And I was telling you yesterday too, it's that comfort, that peace after such a like long, fun,
yeah.
chaotic week. It was just coming back to that like a routine and getting back into work and all of that. Like, it just feels good, I think.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the wedding, it was like, how many months did you work on planning
Yeah.
for this, right? It's kinda like,
Yes.
it almost takes over our identity, like, I am a wedding
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no,
planner,
absolutely.
life on the other side.
Yeah, no,
Good.
absolutely.
And so let me ask you this question. I know we were talking a little bit about it earlier, like, because um as you know, I'm writing a book, and I actually am just
Mhm.
working on this chapter about love and romance. And I kind of did a bit of a sociological analysis, a little bit about like marriage throughout the generations and divorce throughout the generations. And I stumbled upon these ideas that I've been formulating about millennials, because there's two things that I'm hearing in the media. And my daughter's 25, she's in a long-term relationship, but a lot of her friends aren't, a lot of her cousins aren't. And I've been reading a lot and listening with clients as well, that and parents actually talking about their millennial children, that they're not dating, they're not in one-on-one relationships, they just go out as group of friends. um, or if
Mhm.
they do have a long-term relationship, they're just kind of like living together. And it just kind of settles that way. And then the other thing that I'm seeing mainly in the last month or two is all of these studies coming out, and I cite these in my book, about the single female, right? And
Mhm.
all these studies that are coming out saying single women are happier than married women. So tell me what your thoughts are, like, because like, are your friends getting married too? What do you think about this whole idea? Like, are weddings on the way out or what?
Yeah, so it's really surprising. I mean, I definitely I've seen trends in what you're sharing as well, but a lot of, at least in the past couple of years, like from the end of COVID till now, it's like all I'm seeing are back-to-back weddings. Almost everyone I know, like from university or friends, like it's just they got married last year and they're having babies this year. So it's almost like they got married, they're ready to start their families. And I've seen so much of that in the past 2 years. So I don't know if it's just like, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know like what could be contributing to that and what could be contributing to the other side, but maybe there's a mix of both. But I'm speaking on just obviously like the people that I know of, right? People
right,
that are my
right,
age that I went like
right.
that I know from university and all of this. So outside of that, I've seen the same thing, like trends on how more people are actually cohabitating instead of getting married.
Yeah.
And I've seen that come up as well.
Yeah, I guess we just have to be on the lookout for this. I mean, I do understand that, thinking of all of the COVID weddings that were canceled
Yeah.
or rescheduled and canceled again. I mean, it was just heartbreaking to watch our clients go through that. And then all of a sudden everything's open, and then there's a surge, and I even thought of all the people working in the wedding industry and what havoc that
Yeah.
must have been for them, their lives. So yeah, I guess we'll just keep an eye on this in terms of what this trend is all about. And there is the feminist movement where women
Yeah.
don't have to get married to be completed,
Yeah.
and breaking the mold in terms of women that don't want to become mothers. And so
Yeah.
there is something that we really need to kind of pay attention for that. So if anybody was listening and they're considering getting married or are engaged to get married, what would be like one piece of advice that you would give them to protect their well-being or strengthen their relationship?
So this is something that I've always been told and something that I try to live by. Try not to go to bed angry with your partner. I definitely think communicate at that and before the day ends, like whatever is on your mind, if it's really bothering you, if you've got into an argument or a fight, see if you take time for your cooling off, but see if you can have that conversation using exactly the I want, you want, try to understand the situation. And that's something my parents have told me. A lot of other people, like just try not to go to sleep angry at your significant other.
I know that is such an old cliche, but it is still so relevant, right? Don't go to
Yeah,
bed angry. Yeah. Yeah, and for our work, it's kind of like, even if you want to just do the micro version of our dialogue that
yeah,
literally takes 5 or 10 minutes, it's still better to do that than nothing at all. But really, the full dialogue of 30 minutes, it's, I always say, like, if you don't have 30 minutes for your
oh,
relationship,
for sure. Yeah,
and what's going on, right? Because you really
yeah,
want to give it that level of commitment. When I was growing up in the 70s, my dad worked, my mom was a homemaker. And but we always knew that when my dad came home from work, that my mom and dad would have a drink in the living room. And nobody said, and don't come in, but we just kind of knew that that was their couple time.
you.
And I remember I'd crawl up the stairs going, can we eat? Yeah, like, I need to have dinner. But they would always say, okay, my mom would say dinner, and that meant that their talk was over. And
Yeah.
and I don't even remember, like it felt like it was an hour and a half, but I'm sure it wasn't that long. I was just hungry. But I looking back on it, I think what a great ritual they had, because it would have been easy for just my dad to like, because he's like commuting for work, run in the house,
Right.
grab dinner. And they're like, no. And it was just their touch point as a couple of their day. And now we can have the kids come up for dinner. So I always thought that was a great, great
I
routine.
love that. I actually
Mhm.
really love that. That's so
Drinks
heartwarming.
in the living room.
Yeah.
Anyway, well,
So
thanks so
sweet.
much for joining us, Janice, and sharing your life with our listeners. And as therapists, we do need to kind of be conscious about what we're going through in our own lives, good and bad, and let that kind of digest for us so that we can really be, the best therapists we can be for our clients.
Yeah.
Because we're human, and we're as whatever we're going through in our own life can inform us and our clients. So I hope that was helpful for our listeners today. If you're considering to getting married or are engaged, that it just gives you some things to think about, to protect your relationship, and move your sticks around as you're flowing down that river so that you're growing through this huge developmental stage. So thank you again. You can reach us at KG and Associates, Karen Goslin, KarenRSW.com, 647-985-0633, or KarenRSW@yahoo.ca. And Janice, could you share your contact details?
Absolutely. So my email is j6dsouza@gmail.com, and my direct line is 416-316-7686.
Perfect. Thanks again for joining us.